Hello everybody and welcome to Getting APIs to Work. Today we say hello to Arnaud Lauret. Hey Arnaud, how are you doing?
Hello, Eric. I'm fine. I hope you are too.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. So today we'll talk about your book, The Design of Web APIs. And I'm really excited about that because I think the design process is still something that is really important, and sometimes people take it a little too briefly, so to speak. So first, let's just talk about why you wrote this book. What do you think is unique about it, or what was it that you wanted to communicate?
Actually, I wrote it for my old self, and I did a lot of mistake when I started to design APIs, and so I wanted to avoid that others do the same mistakes as me, and I wrote it also because at that time, and I think that's it almost still the case now, there was no book really focusing on designing APIs without talking about implementing APIs. So actually, in this book, you will not learn everything about how to actually implement APIs. If that was the case, maybe I should have called it the implementation of web APIs, but no, it's the design of web APIs. And so it's really about sharing principles, and that you can reuse for many other things, but it's really to help people think like designers, to be sure about why they are creating APIs, what the APIs are supposed to do, how to make sure they will be usable by anyone, thinking about security, usability, documentation, and beyond that, a little bit about documentation and guidelines and governance. So basically, it's API design 101. You can start with without having designing API. Even if you have been designing API for a moment, you can still take advantage of the book, especially if you are more developer profile, because I have met many developers who are to focus on writing codes. They are good at that, but they need sometimes to just stop a little bit and think about what we are doing with APIs to design them. And it's sometimes it's just a little bit of a mind shift, and they realize, hey, now that I know that I have to design APIs, I know that how to do it well. And actually, a few months ago, someone told me, now that I have learned how to design API, I write better code, because what I learn when designing API, I can apply it in my code. So I was quite proud of it.
That is nice, yeah. And that's definitely what I like about the book so much, that it is really a design book. And as you say, there are many design books that are actually more about the implementation. And for this reason, I think it's really nice to see that it has a very clear design focus. And I know that you first thought about giving it a different title. So I think that's actually a nice story to tell. So what was your initial idea for the book's title?
So when it was still a project, so thanks to our friend Mike Amundsen, I discovered a book called The Design of Everyday Things, written by Don Norman. So it's about design, the design of objects. And so it's very interesting book, even if you are not designing objects yourself. If you are writing code, I recommend to read this book.
Yes.
And so the
Read
idea
it.
was to say, okay, I want to write a book about design, and okay, let's do the design of everyday things, but for APIs. And so the first title was The Design of Everyday APIs. I use, so that's why in the book there are many analogies with real world examples, so you can realize sometimes that okay, that's totally stupid to do things that way. But chapters after chapters, and publishing the book becoming closer and closer, I was like, okay, so it was a kind of a joke at the beginning, and now it will be real. And so I feel a little bit ashamed of kind of taking advantage of the fame of Don Norman and maybe not doing something that could be bad for the design of everyday things. So I was really worried about that, and hopefully my publisher said, okay, maybe we can change the book's title to make sure people understand what kind of APIs we are talking about. So what about renaming it the design of web APIs? And shows, okay, that's a very good idea. And so we get the new title, and so the design of everyday APIs was just a joke that hopefully was not printed.
I really liked it when I heard about this title idea, but I also, like you, I was a little bit worried, not so much thinking that, it wouldn't be a good book, but more thinking that like a lot of people probably won't get the reference and that might actually hurt the book. So I think that was my biggest concern. But yeah, so now your title is a little bit more, let's say, old school, but
Yeah.
I think it's good for the book. Now, when we look at what the book does, as you said, right, it is something that's relatively distinct from some others because it focuses a lot really on the design part. And specifically, what I like about it, that it very explicitly says design things early on without jumping into any technical details. So let's talk a little bit about that phase of the design, that early phase, and why you think that's important and what you're recommending there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very important. So that's basically the first part of the book. And because when you talk about designing APIs, especially to developers, uh, usually their first move is to say, okay, what about choosing between get/this and post/that? Okay, it's a little bit too early to talk about that because before choosing HTTP methods, thinking about how you will structure a path and so on, did you actually think about what the API is supposed to do, what needs it is supposed to fulfill? And if you don't do that, you will create terrible APIs. That's a certainty. It's not a risk, it's a certainty. So, and that's not the only problem. Because if you jump straight to the get/this and the post/that, you are only talking to developers. And when you design an API, it is usually, especially if you create public APIs, but even private APIs, it is usually to fulfill business needs. We are not doing APIs or creating software just for fun. Usually we're working inside company, and company need to make money, and to make money they need to create software or just use software. And so all the software we are creating are there to meet some business needs. And to talk about that, you do not talk only to developers. You talk to business analysts, product owners, subject matter experts, the business product people, however you call them, but most people that actually are not developers. So the first round of API design is about talking about needs using natural language with everyone. And so to do that, you can use your favorite software design methods. There are many of them. So in the book, there is a very simple one, which is just there to show principles. The idea is to take, okay, I want to do that. Okay, but how do you do that? There are probably multiple steps to achieve what you want to do. And there are probably multiple high level actions. I call them how. I call them, sorry, what. And that will, and digging that way, okay, what I want to do, how I do it, why do I need to do it, why do I get in return, and doing that again and again for all use cases, for all persona or users, uh, you will be able to analyze finally what needs the API is supposed to cover. And once you have this full list of steps or goals, you basically have the list of functions that will be in your API. And you have that in natural language. So when you say, for example, okay, it's basically as a user, I want to buy a product. Okay, so how do I buy a product? Well, first I start to search a product. That's a step. That's a goal. Then I had it in my basket. I can do that multiple times. Then I check out my order. Then I can track my order and whatever. So you do as you wish, but the idea is to list all the use case, all the flows of steps, and all these steps, all these goals will be the functions of your API. Once you have done that, you can go to the next step and design your API. You will identify the business concepts that are manipulated through all these actions. Then you will choose the actions, or you apply on concept, still using natural language. And once you have done that, you can switch to the HTTP world, which HTTP method will map the action, which path you will use to represent your business concept, and that way you're sure that your API will do something useful and will be complete.
Yes, and I think that really is a very valuable part of the book, right? In particular, because there are many books that kind of leave that part out. And it's sad because you jump into defining something that you never really reflected upon, I would say, as what is it really that I'm doing. So I really like that part. And as you say also, I think what is important, what oftentimes like more technical approaches are missing, is that you can communicate with everybody and not just with people who are open API specialists, and you can have conversations with them about what they want to do and how they maybe then can do it, and they can tell you, oh, I like that, or maybe not so much. So I think that is really it's a very useful addition, I think, to what a lot of people think API design is all about. We have that all the time when we go and design, like people already are, it's like sitting there, it's like, okay, let's start coding. And it's like,
Yeah.
nope, we're not doing that for quite a while. And usually they get a little bit confused, but then after a while, right, you start seeing, oh yeah, maybe now it's actually, it's becoming a better product in the end.
Yeah. And it's really fun to see, because I do hundreds of API design review here, helping or API design workshops, and to see developers who at first are a little bit, what are you talking about?
Yes.
And after one or two review or workshop, they're like, oh my God, I totally changed my mind. And that's actually useful because I don't lose time afterwards to fix my shitty design. So it's really, it's actually not that complicated to convince people. You just have to show them one or two times, and after that say, oh, okay, that's interesting. And you don't have to do a complex analyze process, especially if you are building a small API. That's why the API goal Canva in my book is really useful for that. Most of the time it works, but obviously if you have to work at higher level, you may use other methods that are not described in the book, especially the the event storming method,
Yeah.
which requires more work, but this one works pretty well for larger domain. The API goal Canva works well for smaller domain.
Okay, and now that we have talked a little bit about how to get started with a good product by actually designing it and thinking about the needs of those who are going to use it. Let's also look at another aspect which I think is also really nice in the book, which is the whole usability angle around APIs. And I think that again, it's so we can briefly go back to Don Norman,
Yeah.
right? So there is this famous concept of a Norman door. What is a Norman door? And maybe there are Norman APIs, right?
Yeah. So in the Design of Everyday Things book, Don Norman explain how he has been most of the time traumatized by doors because he never know how to open them. Because when you look at a door, you look at its design and you try to guess if you have to push it or if you have to pull it. And sometimes the design of the door screams, "Oh, you have to pull me to open me." But actually, you have to push it. The design is not, let's say, consistent with past experience. And it's even more than that because it actually contradicts past experience. Yes. So that's really important when we talk about usability in API design to take that matter seriously, because if your API is not easily usable, people don't want to use it at all. And so if it's a public API, people may not give you money to use it, so you will lose money. If it's a private API, and if you're lucky to have a kind of captive customers, so they have to use your API, they have no choice, they will lose their time to understand how it works. And they will ask you countless questions, so you will lose your time too. So even if you don't take care about usability for others, at least do it for yourself, because it will avoid having people asking you the same question over and over.
And I think also the point there is that it's not so hard to be mindful of that, right? You just have to know that it's important, and then you have to avoid doing that. So in the same way as like not designing a Norman door is rather easy, right? You just have 10 people walking through it, and if 10 of them use it the wrong way the first time, it's probably not such a great design. And I think just knowing that, right, is really something that already changes your design habits.
Actually, at least knowing that will help you to think about what you are doing. But knowing what are the different, let's say, topics of API usability will also help you. You have to take care about the, let's say, the names you will choose for everything, for properties, for resources, or whatever. And you have to be careful about not using jargon, and because especially for private APIs, we create internal jargons that are known only by a few people. And if you want to make your API usable by many people, you have to use a language that will be understood by everyone. And so how you design data is important. You have to be careful about how you design your operations, especially how you will handle failure, because when everything is okay, it's good. But when there is an error, if you just say, okay, there's an error, okay, how a consumer is supposed to deal with that? For example, let's say if we transpose that into the real world, in the book there is an example about a washing machine. So you put your laundry in the machine, you put the soap, and then you push the start button, and it does not start. It just says click, and maybe there is a red button, but you don't know what is happening. It's possibly because you just did not close well the door. But if you have a big LCD screen telling you, okay, the door is not closed, you will be able to fix the problem. easily, and so do your laundry. And it's the same for APIs. You have to be careful about that, about the user experience of operation, and do all you can do to help people solve their problems. And at higher level, you usually do not use a single operation in an API. You have to chain them to call them one by one. And all these um, flow of API call should be as smooth and as short as possible. And with those three levels of usability, thinking at each one, you will be able to create easy to use API. But beyond that, because you can create your own way of doing all that, if when you design your API and think about this usability topic, you look at what is happening in the outside world to copy others, to copy practice, to reuse standards, to actually use, for instance, the HTTP protocol. Truly, REST APIs are easy to use because they all share the uniform interface of the HTTP protocol. If I see a get slash this and a delete slash that, I know what will happen. If I, whatever the API, if I get a 404 not found, I know what is happening. Either if I'm using the Twilio API or the GitHub API or the Stripe API, they will work the same. And so that's how you create usable API.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing to mention, with just the methods and status code and these kind of things, right? These are kind of building blocks that you can reuse, that people will recognize, and you don't even have to explain them, right? That's what's really nice about it. They see get, and they've seen get many times, so there's really no need to explain it. And the more building blocks you have, I think the better that works. So that also, I think,
and beyond the HTTP protocol, there are other building blocks that you can use. For example, if you I work in the banking industry, there is a terrible standard, the ISO 20022, that define messages for wire transfers and many other banking operations. From my designer perspective, the format could be simplified, but it's a standard. So if you want to create an API that will be used by banking industry, maybe you should look at that, because most banking software understand ISO 20022. And so that will make your API easy to use for both systems.
And like you say, I like that thought, it's like it's a standard. So even if it's a bad standard, right, it has value because it exists and people know it.
And thanks to content negotiation, you can satisfy everyone. You can use ISO 20022 messages for the banking industry, but you can also use your own custom JSON format for, let's say, fintechs or startups or whatever. All that in the same API, thanks to content negotiation.
That's a good point. So you can customize the experience, right?
Yeah.
That is something that I think is also but on some level it's a basic design thing, right? Where you can say, if I know that I have different consumer groups with different preferences or coming from a different context, I can maybe design two experiences, right? And then basically make everybody happy.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what is this book by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about the spaghetti sauces, I think, where it's like there needs to be a chunky sauce and there needs to be a non-chunky sauce, and then everybody is happy. If you try to create just one sauce, nobody is happy.
Yeah, it's like when you are nowadays you build a website, you build a responsive website, so it works on desktop and on mobile, and you can see it that way when you are building your API.
That I've never. Have you heard people saying responsive API?
No, I just thought about it. That's the first time I actually said that.
Okay. Okay, now we'll have to think about that. It's a nice thought. Okay, so I think it's really interesting to talk to you about the book and how it really takes the design angle seriously. And I really like that about the book, because I think that the pure design, and really even you saying it explicitly, right? It's not about implementing, it's about designing. I think that is really something that we need more as a community. I think just really looking at an API as something that's different from the implementation, and really being disciplined about that. Arnaud, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us. I will link to the book in the description, of course, and I hope that our viewers got a good overview of what the book is about. I think there is some preview feature to look through the book.
Yeah,
right?
actually,
If
you
go
can
to the
go
website.
to you can go to the Manning website and actually read the book freely. Let's say probably 5 minutes a day. But there are something like, so I shouldn't say that, but and there are maybe, let's say, 200 figures in the book. So in the live book, you can still look at the figures even when the text is replaced by something that you can read. So I hope that it will help you. And also look at the detailed table of content, because I've read some comments about the book with people who were quite disappointed about the content, especially, hey, you're not talking about implementation. Yes, it's not in the table of content. So read the table of content and you will not be disappointed. And just last word about, so there is a third part about the in the book which is quite huge, and we talk about security, API evolution, documentation, and a little bit about governance. So reading this book, you will really get a good starter in your API journey. And even if you are already on it, I think you will find something which is interesting.
Okay, I think that was a good advertisement, so to speak, and I really think it's totally fine for me that there is nothing about implementation, because we definitely have enough books
Yeah.
about that. So it's a really nice complement, and I think for a lot of practitioners, it will expand their perspective, and I think that is always something that is really important. Okay, so thanks a lot, and if you liked the video, please hit the like button, and I think I want you back on the channel once you've done with your style book, but
Yeah.
we'll see how quickly you've got that under
We
control,
told that,
but I'm
I
still
think,
hoping that it's out soon.
yeah, 2022 will probably be the year of
Yes.
renewal of the API Stylebook website.
Okay,
And
so you'll
thank
be
you very
back.
much, Eric, for inviting me.
Okay, thank you. And bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.